Hello, welcome to this video on parsing an Opta XML file. In this case I'm going to use a Rugby file, but the same would apply to any of the Opta files. Same process would apply. So I'm going to dive in. So just to explain a little bit, I suppose, what an XML file is. So if we open one up, so I'll open it with a text editor just to show you. So you can see it comes in as a bunch of code, which looks pretty difficult to read, but it does actually make quite logical sense. So we have a fixture ID in here, which tells us which fixture it belongs to, and then you'll see we have some tags. So we have an action row tag. This is essentially each event that happens in the game. So this is the structure of the file. We have an action row, and then if we scroll down near the bottom, we start to get, instead of action rows, we start to get player tags. So you can see here, here's a player tag. So it tells us the player ID, the shirt number they wore, the club ID they play for, the position ID, their first name, second name, minutes played, and so on. And then the very last row is a fixture sort of detail. So who played in the game, who was the home team, who was the away team, what was the score, and who was the ref. Okay, if we try to open this in Excel, it doesn't really work and it breaks. And of course there are other tools like R and Python where you can write scripts to do this. The thing I like about Alteryx is it's more drag and drop, so you don't need to know code to be able to decipher this and to be able to output into something that's useful. And that's ultimately what we want to get to. We want to get to maybe a flat file that we can put into something like Tableau, where we can then go and visualize the data in a more meaningful way. Okay, so this is what we're going to create. So this is Alteryx. This is a workflow, and essentially it's taking an input here and it's going through all these various steps, and then at the end it's outputting to a file. I'll just run that just to show you what it looks like. So if I browse here, you'll see we've got an event name, we've got a fixture ID, we've got the player involved, the team they played for, and as I scroll across, I get all of the information I need: the XY coordinates, the fixture date, and then all the qualifiers. So the qualifiers is how Opta essentially breaks down an event further. So this was a particular event. It was kick return, tackle neutral, neutral contact, that sort of thing. You see each of these have different qualifiers. And that's really what we want to be able to pull out of the file. So I'll go through this as quickly as I can. I won't cover everything in total detail. There are plenty of tutorials and different things to show you how to do some of the steps, but I'll try and take you through as much of this as I can. Okay, so I start with a blank canvas, and I'm going to add in an input tool. And in this case, I'm just going to connect to that file. So that's Scotland Wales file. In there, and what this XML file, the structure of it, has three distinct parts. So it has the action, so the events, it has the players involved in the game and each event, and then it has the fixture detail, so who played and that sort of stuff. So there's a couple of things I just want to set up in here, so I'm just going to check those two boxes, and then what I want to do is go to the Parse menu, and I'm going to use the XML parse. And what essentially I want is three different streams of this. Okay, so the first one here is going to be, I'm going to specify that I want a player. This one here is going to be the events. So in Opta, they're called an action row. And then this one here is going to be the game information, which I know is called data. Okay, and you get that just from exploring the file, really. So if I press play up here or run the workflow, you'll see I get three distinct paths. So I get 46 records. So these are the players that played in the game. I get 1,500 events. So that's 1,500 individual rows essentially. And then I get one record ID. So they're my three streams, okay? And again, as I showed you, I've pre-built this, so we're just going to rebuild this. So they're my three streams, and then I've used what's a select tool. So if I drag in a select tool, I'll just show you. Essentially, it just does what it says on the tin, so it allows me to choose what fields I want to continue using in my workflow. So I'm not interested in these three, for example. So I'm interested in the rest of the data, but I don't want to keep pulling through all of the XML information. So I'm just going to take those out of each of these. Okay, again, not vital for today's understanding, but just explaining exactly what I'm doing. And again, I can run this workflow at any stage and see, you know, I still have 46, I still have 1500, and I still have one record. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do is, you'll see a lot of the time the qualifiers, the fixture ID, they're all these numeric fields. So for example, this FXTID is the fixture tournament ID. Now 209 doesn't mean much to anybody, amount, so I'd like to be able to replace that with the actual name of the tournament. So I have this already set up here, so I'm just going to copy and paste this across. Okay, and essentially what I have here, I'll show you now, is it's another input. This time it's just a text input, and I've simply just typed in the fixture tournament ID number and then a competition name next to it. So I've obviously done some exploration to try and figure the codes out, but once you do that, it's fairly simple. There are 8 tournament IDs in the data set that I had, so I was just able to go through and identify each one and give it a name. Okay, and again, I'm just using the select tool to make sure that the data type is okay. And then what I want to do is throw a join on here. So a join is essentially, if for anyone in Excel would use a VLOOKUP, it'd be something similar, or if you're a SQL or anything like that, you'll be well aware what a join is. So essentially it's just taking files from one set, or data from one file and data from another file, and merging them or putting them on the same row. So what I want to do is just put the competition name on every row of this where the fixture tournament ID matches. Okay, so I go into my join tool, and on the left I pick fixture TID, and on the right is fixture TID. Okay, and then it lists all the fields that it's going to pull through. All right, so I don't need a duplicate of the TID. Just interested now in pulling through the competition name, and I can click run. And what I should get is here in the join part, I should get all of the details that I wanted, and then at the end I get the competition name. So it's a Six Nations game, which is exactly what I wanted. Okay, and you could go back here in the select tool and then start to take out some of the things that you don't need. So I don't need to know what the tournament ID is now at any stage. I might take out, you know, the ref ID if I'm not interested, the path name, the lead time, you know, so I could go through and select fields that I want and just press run then at any stage, and I'd make that file usable. Okay, so that's my tournament ID added on to the fixture. So that's the first join that I'm going to do, and we're going to do plenty now to just kick this off. The next one is I have an action row. If I click on the output here, so I have an action row. So this is an event, and you'll see it has player ID, so PLID, all along here. Okay, so instead of an ID, I'd like to get a name. Those names are contained in this stream up here. Okay, so you'll see here's a PLID, player ID, and then here's the details of that player. Okay, so I'd like to just join the details of that player onto each row of the event, so I can have an idea of what player was involved in what event. All right, so again, we're going to take a join tool here. I'm going to click on that, and we're going to do PLID matches PLID. Okay, and if I click on the join, you'll see I get a join. So for this event here, I can see now what player was involved, Scott Baldwin, how many minutes he played in the match, and it starts to give me, you know, the coordinates of the event and so on. I still don't have a description of the event. We'll add that in a second, but it's starting now to give me the information that I want. So it's added the player name to each one of those events. And again, I would have the ability to go through this and start to join on various different things. Okay, so I want that join to be where the player ID matches. I also wanted to make sure that it takes in the fixture, so that we don't just have a list of players matched to any event. It has to be in that game, because they could change position or they could play less minutes, obviously, or anything like that. So we'd like the fixture ID to match as well. So I'll go back up here and just make sure that the fixture ID matches the fixture ID in the action row. Okay, so we fixture ID there. So this is all looking exactly as I wanted. And again, if I was doing this for a real life example, I'd be more selective in terms of picking what events I want to output and maybe rename them. I don't want all these duplicates and different things. Okay. So that's looking good. So that's my players are now joined onto my events, and I have my competition name joined onto my data. But there's one sort of outstanding issue within this. So if you remember, I had 1,500 events, but when I look at the join, I've only had about 1,100. And the reason for that is there are events that aren't attributed to an individual player. So they're like team events. So they could be scrums or lineouts or rucks or mauls, things like that aren't necessarily given to an individual player. It's just that Wales or Scotland had a scrum. Okay, so we need to be able to deal with those. Now where they'll be is if I click on the right. So these are the unjoined records that are coming from the event stream. Now I want them in my final list. I don't want to ignore those events. They're important to me. If I click on the left here, you'll see there are some players that don't join on. So they might have been, unused subs or subs that just, you can see here they got no minutes. So they're probably unused subs. But I do need the join, so where there was a match, and then I need the events that didn't match a player. And for that I can use the union tool. And I'm going to just union the join and the right. So you can see I'm just attaching those two data streams to this union tool. Okay, and I don't really need to set anything up here. Auto config by name. They're all going to have, the columns are all going to be the same. Again, I can just run. And what I really want out of here is I want to make sure I haven't lost any events. So I should have 1,500 events, and I have 1,500 events. Okay, but now if I scroll down, what I should start to see is some null player names. So you see here now I get null player ID, or null forename, surname, and so on. And that's because the player ID is 500, which is actually a team player ID. Okay, it's not. And here's 700, which is the other team's player ID. I think 500 is Wales and 700 is Scotland. And we can fix that later on, but that's looking much better. Now the last thing last join I want to do in this case is I want to be able to add the fixture ID. I want to be able to take the information I got here. So from this fixture ID, I want to know what date the match was, I want to know competition, the name, and all that. So again, we're going to do another join. So I'm just going to drag the join tool on here. And we're going to take the left-hand side there and the right-hand side there. And again, this is going to be on fix ID. Okay, so the fix ID here needs to match the fix ID here. And when it does, give me all the fields coming from this table here. Attach them on basically to each row. Okay. Now I'm just going to go to my join here and I'm just going to deselect duplicate fields. So I just don't want it to take through any duplicate fields. But again, if I just scroll across, what you'll begin to see is I've got the player name now. I've got all the action information with these codes, which we're going to take out now in a second. And now I have the fixture details. So on each row now I know the date, who the home team, who the away team was, competition name, and so on. Okay, so that's the general structure of the data that I'm looking for. That's all coming out. Now the last sort of couple of steps that we need to do is, each of these actions, action type, action results, they're just numbers. And what we'd like to be able to do is obviously swap those numbers out for a meaningful description. And to do that, I've created two tables, one for the actions and one for these other 5 qualifiers, as Opta call them, that we're able to swap out the numbers for a meaningful name. So when we go to visualize it or analyze it, we're dealing with English language names as opposed to numbers. Okay, so to do that, we're gonna put in some more inputs. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my in-out tab, and we're gonna take an input data, just pop it on here. And we're going to start with the Opta events. So event ID, if I just load this file, I'll give you a quick look. It's a very simple file. So it has an event ID, which is a number, and it has an event name. Okay, so for each event ID, it has a name, and we're interested in the name. We're interested in swapping the number for the name. Okay, in this file here. Now, because it's an Excel file, I just want to make sure that the data is coming through. So I think I need I'm going to just change that to a string so it matches the data type here. So you'll see here, it's called action. And you see it's a string here. So just in order to do the join, I'm just going to make sure that the data types are the same. Okay. And again, we're just going to take a join to another join. And what we want to do is say where the event ID equals the action. Okay, and on the left, I'm not interested in the event ID. I'm just interested in the event name. And then again, we can run this. So you can see we're at our right records, 1553, and then instead of a number, we've got the event name. So plenty of carries, possession, collection, tackles, rucks, sequence, line out, pass, and on we go. Okay, so that looks pretty good. If we check on the right hand side here, it should be 0. So this right hand side would mean any events that haven't matched to an event name, basically. And we will have some here, so some of these events haven't matched to an event, and that's fine. Maybe they didn't happen in this game, or they're not used anymore, or anything like that. But we know by the count, so the 1553 is the number of events we're looking for at the end. So that looks great. Okay, so a few more steps. What I need to do is, so the way Opta works is it has an event and then it has a series of qualifiers. And the qualifiers start here, so you see action type, results, qualifier ID, and so on. Okay, and again, I want to swap out all of those. Now I could do a join, but I'd have to do a join for each column, so I'd end up with 5 more joins. So I'm going to do it in a slightly different way. It's the same outcome, but it is a slightly different way. So I'm going to use this transform tool. So what I want to do is, if you look at the 2 images here, so crosstab and transpose are the 2 tools we're going to use now. So transpose it is, if you follow the image, it's data that's going across and we want it to go down. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to turn these 5 columns into just one and have them. So for each event now, we're going to essentially have 5 rows for every event. Okay, with the action type on one, the action result on the next, qualifier 3, 4, and 5, and so on. Now, just to show you what this is doing, and there's no real necessity for this in terms of production value or anything like that, but I'm just going to add in a record ID so you can see clearly what's happening. So every event now has a record ID. Okay, so 1, and if we scroll all the way down to the end, we'll get 1553. Okay, so just to show you what this is doing as I sort of transform the data from one method to another. Okay, so what I'm interested in here is transposing, and again, I'm not going to go into a massive amount of detail on how exactly this works. It's more just to show you what's done. So I don't want these as my key fields. My data fields, so just select them here. Okay, I'm just going to run this and then show you what's happening. Okay, so you'll see first of all the number of records I have now is over 7,000, and if we take 1553 and multiply it by 5, it's exactly the number that we're looking for. So it's essentially just 5 rows for every ID. All right, and you'll see here record ID, so there's 5. And if we go all the way to the end, what it's done is it's just taken the action type, action result, qualifier 3, 4, and 5, and then put the number beside it. And it's just repeated that 5 times for every single event. Okay. So what that allows us to do now is add in the qualifier names. So again, I'm just going to take an input ID or an input data. We're going to grab our qualifier IDs, which is another table that I've made. So you can see here it has an action name, a description, and then at the end it has a qualifier number. Okay, so that's what we're going to match on. So we're going to grab a join tool. And we're going to take qualifier and match it to the default value here, which is value. Okay, so every time this number matches this number, I want it to return the name, which I've called action here. Okay, So again, I don't want the description for now, and I'm not interested in the qualifier number. That doesn't make any difference to me. I'm just going to run that again. Okay, so it's giving me an error, so it needs to be a string field. So again, I can use my select tool just to make sure. So see the qualifiers come through as a double, which is a numeric format. So let's just make sure they match. Rerun that. Okay, so 7765, which is 1553 times 5. So that's exactly what I want. And what you should see now, although list them in sort of an odd order, let's just sort them so you can get a better idea. So I'm going to sort by value. Let's try descending. See what that does. Does that explain? Okay, so you can see there it's the name, the value, and then over here is what the action is. So neutral tackle, passive, ineffective contact, neutral contract, and so on. Contact, sorry, not contract. Okay, so it's returned the value, which is essentially the action, which is exactly what we wanted. So we wanted the English language, not the number. Okay, in this case, so that's perfect. The only thing we have to do now is reorganize the data so that each event is only on one row. So we essentially want to put these back in the order that we had them. So we've done the join, but now we want to retransform them. So for this we use the crosstab, and you'll see it again, the image shows you it's going from long ways, so from sort of single columns out to multiple columns. Okay, so the new column headers are going to be the name, and it's going to be action is the values. And again, there's loads of tutorials on these individual tools. I'm just really just trying to show you how I've done it in this case. And this is just asking again what data you want to pull through and how you want to group it. And we want almost everything for now. Again, you might be more selective in terms of what fields you would pick if you were doing this for real, but let's just presume we want everything for now. I think that's it, and I should run that. I should get back to 1553 events, and I do. So you can see record ID is carry, and now instead of numeric fields under these action types and action results and all, you'll see what I have is, you know, neutral contract, cross gain line, tackle neutral, other carry. Okay, and you can delve further into what they mean and all that type of thing at another stage, but that is essentially how we turn the data around and back into something that's very usable, and we can then plug into Tableau, as I said. The last stage you'd probably do is an output. So I could drop an output tool on here, and I can output the data then back to, you know, I have multiple file choices here in terms of Excel and everything like that. Just for this demo, I'm not going to output it. I'm just going to put a browse tool on, so that just will show us what we have outputted. Now the big advantage to a workflow like this is that, okay, this is a lot of work maybe to set it up, but once I've done it, it's done. So, you know, we've counted the number of events here, but suppose next week I have a different game. I can just go back to this file, pick a different input. So let's take the Scotland-Ireland game as an example and press run. And now I have a very different file. So you can see there's over 2,000 events in here, and it's pulled in all the right names and all the right events. So it's fully repeatable once you've done it once. And then you're not restricted to a single file at a time. So I can go back up to here. So I've just taken the Pro 14. Let's say we took a round 1 as an example. So I'll just pick that. What I can do is use, and again, there are loads of tutorials to show you how to do this. But if I just put an asterisk in there, what it's going to do is look at all of the files in that particular folder. So just to show you what I did was I went into round 1. So you'll see there's 6 games within that. And I can just press play. And what it's doing now is it's run through all 6 of those games, and it's output 10,000 records. And obviously you could set that to run a folder for an entire championship, an entire 5 years worth of data, whatever it is, and export it as a file ready then for your analysis with each player, the fixture details, all of the qualifiers and everything like that. So hopefully that's useful. That's how to parse an XML file from Opta using Alteryx. Thank you.